Hello everyone and welcome to this session for demoing the integration between Visure Requirement and Spark's Enterprise Architect. My name is Jose Manuel Munoz and I am a Senior Requirement Engineer in Visure Solution. In the following webinar, as I was mentioning, I will be demoing the integration between both tools. For a more detailed webinar about how this is going to be really helpful for your company and about the business benefits of these integrations, please refer to the other webinar, Bridging the Gap Between Requirements and Spark's EA, Model-Based System Engineering. In this one, I will be focusing only in the exchange of information, in the automatic exchange of information between both tools. Before starting showing that, I would like to first introduce the two projects that we are going to connect into Enterprise Architect and Visure Requirement. The one that you are currently seeing right now, it's the Visure Requirements project. As you can see, it's a really simple project in which we have three types of artifacts. We have got user requirements, which describe from a user point of view the problem that need to be addressed, that need to be resolved. We have got system requirements that are traced with the previously described user requirements and that represent a proposal for the solution of the problem expressed in the user requirements. Both elements, the user requirements and the system requirements, will be traced, and the system requirements are solving those previously described user requirements. And finally, we have another package representing the use cases. This package is currently empty because in the point that we are right now, we have described some user requirements, we have described some system requirements for solving the user requirement, but not yet all of them, and we are still pending the definition of those use cases. Probably the person in charge of writing down those requirements is not going to be the same writing down the use cases. Maybe we have got a business analyst writing down the user and system requirement, and a completely different person, another kind of analyst, a modeler, however we call it, it's going to work in probably a different tool, writing down the use cases that are linked, that are attached with those system requirements. Okay, the idea, as you can see in this navigation tree, is that probably the user requirements will be traced, or for sure will be traced with the system requirement, and those system requirements are going to be solved by means of use cases that will explain more in detail how exactly we are going to fix that, or we're going to address that that problem that was expressed originally in the user requirements. As I was mentioning, probably the person in charge of those use cases is going to work not directly in Visure Requirement, but in a completely different tool, like, for example, Enterprise Architect. Okay, as you can see here, this is our Enterprise Architect project. That it's another really simple project containing just a couple of modules. One representing the requirement, which is currently empty, and another one representing the use case, which is also currently empty. In order to write down the use cases, we will need to have the system requirements also in Enterprise Architect. Okay, so how we can do this, how we can just keep each professional, each person working in their own tool, in their own environment, but keep both of them communicate. So when we create new system requirements, they will be reflected into Enterprise Architect, and when we create use cases, they will be reflected also into Visure Requirement. Okay, for doing that, we are going to demo today the OpsGap integration between Visure Requirement and Enterprise Architect. So what I'm going to do is just a really simple project in which I will be creating some requirements into Visure Requirement in the section System Requirements, as those are the ones that I would like to have into the modeling tool. Those system requirements are going to be automatically synchronized to Enterprise Architect, and then in Enterprise Architect I will be able to create use cases out of those system requirements, work with them, characterize them with attributes, write descriptions, put them into diagrams, whatever. And afterward, automatically those use cases are going to be also reflected into Visure requirement. So the person in charge of the system requirements or the user requirements is going to be able to see exactly how those needs, how those problems are going to be addressed by the means of those use cases. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just write down those requirements in here. For example, just let's figure out that I'm going to use these user requirements as my starting point. And what I'm going to do right now is just create several system requirements that are going to be traced with this user requirement. Okay, so the idea is that the system requirements that we are going to write down right now are going to address the problem expressed in this user requirement. So in order to do it faster, I have already write down in a little notepad the names and the description of all these system requirements that I'm going to create. So I just need to copy paste those, and I don't need to write down from scratch. Okay, so I will just write this requirement down, and I will save this one and create a new one. Now I'm going to create a new requirement here, which is going to be the fields that are required for creating a new user in my application or something like that, for example. So just put here the description. I'm going to copy again this other requirement, which is the description for how we are going to, or the needs for deleting an existing user. Okay, just as simple as that. And finally, a fourth requirement is going to be created, which is going to be this one, the edit users. Okay, and I'm going to also copy the description in here. So just as simple as that, I will be creating those four new requirements. Okay, these requirements are currently checked out by my user, by the user that have been creating them. So I will be able to still keep changing them. Let's put the descriptions, the priorities to high, medium. Just let's play with them a bit. And once we are done, once we are finished, we can just select the requirement and check the requirements in. Okay. By checking in these requirements, we are just closing the first version of these requirements, and we are making it available for other users, so they will be able to probably check those requirements out or keep modifying them if needed or whatever. But right now, the first version of this requirement is closed. So let's figure out that those requirements are already finished, and we are ready to synchronize them with Enterprise Architect. In order to do that, we can perform a really complete mapping, a really tailored mapping between both tools. Okay, so I can define exactly in here, let me show you the mappings, what fields are going to be synchronized from Visure requirement to Enterprise Architect, and exactly how those fields are going to be synchronized. So for example, we can configure only the requirements contained in the block system requirement, in the section system requirements, are going to be synchronized, and only those in a given status, for example, only those that are already approved, or only those that are or that has been created by this user, things like that. Apart from those filters, we can also configure exactly which fields are going to be mapped. So for example, the name in Visure requirement is going to be mapped with the name in Enterprise Architect. The description field into Visure requirement is going to be mapped with the field called nodes in Enterprise Architect. Or the priority is going to be mapped with the corresponding priority there, and so on and so on. Okay, so we can really configure which fields are going to be synchronized and exactly how they are going to be synchronized. Even if the, for example, priority, it's not matching both tools. Maybe the priority into Visure requirement it's high, medium, low, but in Enterprise Architect it's going to be a number 1, 2, 3 or something like that. We can perform the mapping between those values. So it's really easy, it's really simple to keep all those elements mapped. Okay. So once we have wait for a couple of minutes or whatever we have configured the integration, we can go back to Enterprise Architect and just reload the project. And when we do that, we can see that now we have got these 4 requirements in here, which are the requirements that they have just created a moment ago into Visure requirement. Okay, so create user, delete user, edit, and finally the required fields requirements. All of them have been synchronized along with their description that you can see here in the note field, and also the priority, which is the other field that I have mapped. We can configure other fields to be synchronized, but in this case, in order to keep it simple, that is what I have mapped. So now I'm going to switch my hat and just say that I'm going to be the modeler or the person in charge of writing down the use cases. So what I'm going to do is just add in the use case model some elements, some use cases. For example, I don't know, use case 1, and I'm going to call it create user, just the same name as their system requirement. So I can create this one in here. You see, for creating users, or the description that I want. Click on OK, and I'm going to just create some traces at create link between this one and the create user and requires field. Okay, because I will need to address those two requirements with this use case. Okay, I will be doing the same with the other two requirements. I'm going to add a new use case again, use case 2, and it's going to be edit users, for example. Create, and just I'm going to say here blah blah blah, or whatever. It's just a little example, so this should be more than enough. Okay, and I will be once again adding a link between this and the edit and the require field. Okay, and finally I will be creating the last use case used for describing how we are going to delete users, for example. Okay, and this use case describes how to delete users. Okay, we can of course afterward, and also I'm going to create the trace, the link with the delete user. Okay, we can of course configure or characterize these use cases by means of steps or scenarios that we can just describe here into Enterprise Architect with the main path, the basic path, the alternative flows, the alternative path, whatever we need. Or we can just put those use cases into a use case diagram, also trace them with actors, represent them as we need, and so on and so on. But for the purpose of this demo, for this integration, just creating the use case should be more than enough. Okay, and for the use cases, what I have done is just configure that we would like to have got back into Visure requirement the use cases along with the traces between the use case and the system requirements that I have exported a moment ago. Okay, so if now I go back to Visure requirement and wait for a few seconds, I can see, oh, there we are. I can see that the use cases have been created here into Visure requirement automatically out of the use cases created into Enterprise Architect. Okay, so for example, oh, I misspelled create, so it's create instead of create. And we can also check in here the description and the traceability. In the related item section, we can see that this one is related with the create users and require field, system requirement. The edit one is also relate with the edit users and the required fields, and finally the delete user is related with the delete user one. Okay, we have configured this integration to be executed. In this case, I think it's 1 every minute or something like that. But it's possible to configure when we want to, let's say, push or synchronize automatically the requirements. Thanks to this integration, the analyst and the user can keep working in what we call, say, the wall of words, in which we have got just requirement with the description and so on. And the more technical guys from the modeling point of view, the designers and so on, can keep working in the modeling tool where they can just create use cases with diagrams and so on. But probably the person that is going to request the feature is not going to understand, but he doesn't need to do that. You can see just directly here the traceability between all those artifacts and see exactly, okay, so what I requested is this, is going to be solved through this, and exactly this is the how it's going to be fixed through the use case. Like I was saying, this is just a little example of how we can integrate both tools and automatically export and import all the information. In order to get more detailed description of the integration and the business process behind it, please again refer to our other webinar, Bridging the Gap Between Requirements and Spark's Enterprise Architect, Model-Based System Engineering. But I think that this short demo should be more than enough so you can just understand what we can get through this automatic integration. So that has been everything for today. Thank you very much for your attention, and please check in the description or check in our webpage for further webinar or related webinar. Thank you very much.